Well, my passion is Curanderismo. I study, I research, I write about it, and I teach a course every summer on the topic. How many of you have been to the course? Some of you, I see some hands up. So you know what it is. Curanderismo comes from the word curar, which means to heal. A curandero is a male healer, a curandera, a female healer. And think about this. In earlier years, there were few medical doctors, there were few ministers, priests, no counselors. So the curandero played all these roles using a holistic approach to healing the body, mind, and spirit. Now, my mom was not a curandera, but she should have been one. She would tell us, all 6 of us children, she would say, "Don't you dare get sick. And if you do, I'll take care of your illness." And she did. Using medicinal plants, using rituals, she kept us healthy. I'll give you an example. She loved the aloe vera plant, sábila. And she would call it la plantita milagrosa, the miraculous plant. And she would say, "This plant heals everything from pimples to wrinkles." Indeed, she used it on her wrinkles and on our pimples. But she also used it for burns and sunburns. And my dad had serious digestive problems, so she gave him papaya. Every day, she gave him papaya for breakfast. And she would ask us, "Please take your papaya, eat your papaya." Of course, you know how kids are. We didn't eat papaya. Until recently, I was diagnosed with diverticulitis, and the physician said, "You will need surgery." So immediately I got on the phone, I called Rita, my curandera friend from Mexico. I said, "Rita, I'm having surgery." She said, "No, you're not." She said, "Take papaya." 3 times a day if you have to. I said, "That's what my mom used to say." And she said, "Did you listen to your mom?" Mother always knows best. And then there were those wonderful rituals. For example, the ritual of the 7 knots in Spanish is called El Rito de los 7 Nudos. How many of you have problems? Come on, all of us have problems. And this ritual, and it's amazing how the curanderos use simple things to deal with serious illnesses. All you need is a ribbon, a red ribbon, about 1.5 feet in length, and you think of 7 problems. And if you think you don't have 7 problems, you do. You take the ribbon, you take the half of the ribbon, and you tie a knot for your first problem. And you think about your problem, and you can pray if you'd like. Move a couple of inches to the right, you tie your second knot for your second problem, and then you go to the left, and then to the right, and to the left, and to the right, until you get to the 7th knot for your 7th problem. So you've already tied a circle with 7 knots. You take the ribbon with the 7 knots, and you find an empty jar, like an empty peanut butter jar or a mason jar. You put your ribbon with your knots in the jar, you close it, go to the backyard. Be careful the neighbors aren't watching, they think you're digging money. So you dig a hole, you bury the jar with the ribbons, and therefore you get rid of your 7 problems. Isn't that interesting? Very simple. Now, this reminds me of another ritual. A friend of mine told me, he's a curandero, he said, when we were kids, my dad was an alcoholic, and he would come home and he would insult us, and he would curse at my mom, and we were miserable. But there were times that our dad would come home, and he would go to the backyard, and we would sneak behind him, and we would hide in the shrubs. And then he would lie on the ground, lie on his stomach, and he would take out his pocket knife, and he would dig a hole. And then he would curse at that hole, and he would yell obscenities at that hole, and then he would cover it. And then he would come home and he would be as sweet as ever. What was he doing? What was it that he was getting rid of all that anger, all that stress that's in a lot of us, all that garbage that sometimes we need to get rid of in a very simple way. And then there was the ritual of susto, which means fright. Sociologists refer to susto as magical fright. Whenever you have a traumatic experience, an accident, maybe a fire, or maybe you've come back from a war, you may be suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I remember my cousin came back from Vietnam, and I'm sure he had PTSD, but I don't even think we had a label for it back then. And he would have flashbacks, he'd have migraines, he'd have suicidal thoughts. And my mother and my aunt said, he's got susto pasado. It's a serious susto. So what they did is they took plants, just not any plant. They took basil, they took rue, and rosemary, and they swept his body from head to toe 3 times in prayer. And I remember they would whisper, "May the spirit of Juan return to his body," 3 times a week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for a month. And they asked us to be part of the rituals. The neighbors would come and support. At the end of the month, my cousin was normal. Isn't it amazing how these wonderful things can cure a person? Now, my belief is that we can create a new healthcare model that will bring both traditional medicine and modern allopathic medicine together. In fact, I've seen this model work very effectively in Mexico at a place called TEDx, Centro de Desarrollo hacia la Comunidad, or a Human Development Center. It's really a school for curanderos, and hundreds, if not thousands, of curanderos go through that school, and usually it's a certificate program that lasts about 3 years. I was there about 3 years ago, and I had a terrible pain. I had sciatica. I could hardly walk. And one of the curanderos, who's also a professor there, said, "Cheo, what's wrong with you?" I said, "Well, I have sciatica, and I've had it for years." She said, "Can I work on you?" I said, "Of course." So she said, "First, we're going to a temazcal, which is a Mexican sweat lodge." And we did for about an hour. And then she gave me an herbal tea. And then she said, "Take a nap." She wrapped me in a blanket. And I napped for about 30, 40 minutes. Afterwards, she worked on my leg. She massaged, she pulled, she stretched. And after about an hour and a half, she said, "Go to sleep." I slept like a baby. The next morning, not only was I walking, I was running. And I have been pain-free for 3 years, folks. It's just incredible. At this school, TEDx, they teach curanderos that are actually the doctors of their villages things like healthy lifestyles, diets, juice therapy, acupressure, acupuncture. They make their own medicine with herbs. They make tinctures in alcohol base. They make microdoses with a water base. And they teach laugh therapy, risa terapia. Did you hear me? Laugh therapy. Now, Niño Fidencio, a famous curandero in the 1920s, was already doing laugh therapy. And now Rita, my friend Rita Navarrete, does laugh therapy. She teaches laugh therapy, even here at the University of New Mexico during the summers. Now, I think Rita has already realized that laugh activates endorphins, the natural body painkillers, and it suppresses epinephrine, the stress hormone. It also helps the immune system. It circulates the blood. It relieves anxiety. And I'd like to try an exercise with you that she taught me. Could you please stand, all of you, for a second? Now, I want you to go along with what I say, okay? Start by saying, he. Now, okay, now, he. Now, ha, ha, ha. Now, ho, ho, ho. Please sit down. Now, if any of you were experiencing pain, you will be pain-free for the next 30 to 40 minutes. Okay. I'm serious. Going back to the model, let's dream big and let's bring both forms of medicine. Now, we're beginning to do this at our own University of New Mexico Health Sciences Center, thanks to Dr. Arti Prasad, who has a Center for Life here. Yes. But this has to exist all over the country, in fact, all over the world. And I'll tell you, this is what we need to meet the needs of those that are uninsured, especially those 11 million immigrants that live here. The only time they go to the hospital is when they're really sick and they go to an emergency room, which is overcrowded and understaffed. So let's come up with a new model and stay healthy. Eat papaya and laugh a lot. Okay. Okay.